I can wake your son, the nurse whispered. Then a miracle began. The scent of antiseptic clung to the air. Beeping machines pulsed through the stillness. Inside room 417, everything was frozen except for the steady blinking of monitors. 9-year-old Evan Carrington lay silent, his small frame swallowed by the white hospital bed. Tubes were connected to his arms and chest. His eyelids didn't flutter. His fingers didn't move. Not since the car crash 11 days ago. Beside the bed, Daniel Carrington, a man once known for his steel nerves and ruthless business sense, looked nothing like the sharp, billionaire tech CEO the world recognized. His once polished shoes were worn, his hoodie wrinkled. The stubble on his jaw had grown into a shadow, but none of that mattered. His only focus was Evan, his son, his only child. "Come on, buddy," he whispered, his voice rough with exhaustion. "You're stronger than this. Just squeeze my hand, just once." He held Evan's tiny hand in his large, trembling one. Silence. Daniel leaned back, covering his face with his hands. A part of him refused to cry because crying would mean accepting the truth that Evan might never wake up. "There's no brain activity. We're keeping him stable, but we've done all we can." He had heard it all. Every empty phrase from every specialist flown in from around the world. Their fancy degrees, their shaking heads, they all said the same thing. Evan wasn't coming back. And still, Daniel sat there waiting, hoping, begging. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. Suddenly, the door creaked open. Daniel didn't turn. Probably another nurse checking the chart. They came and went, like ghosts. But this time, the footsteps stopped at Evan's side. Daniel looked up. A young nurse stood there. She was unfamiliar. Around 25, with deep hazel eyes that seemed unusually calm. Her posture was straight, her uniform perfectly clean, not a wrinkle in sight. Her name tag read, Liana RN. "You're not on his usual shift," Daniel said, his voice tired. "Who sent you?" "I volunteered," she replied softly. "I've been waiting for this moment." He stared at her, confused. "What does that mean?" She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer to Evan, gently placing her hand on his forehead. "What are you doing?" Daniel stood up. "Don't touch him. Who even approved this?" She didn't look at him. She leaned down to Evan's ear and whispered, "Evan, I know you're still in there. I can wake you now." Daniel blinked. "Excuse me." Liana closed her eyes. Her lips moved, whispering something but not in English. It was a soft, strange rhythm, a language Daniel didn't recognize. "Stop," he said firmly. "Seriously, stop whatever this is." But just then, Evan's index finger twitched. Once. Daniel froze. His eyes widened. "Did you see that?" Liana didn't react. She kept her hand on the boy's temple and whispered again, softer this time. The monitors didn't change, but Daniel saw it. Another twitch, then a third. He moved closer to the bed, heart pounding. "Evan, buddy, can you hear me?" And then Evan's lips parted. Daniel's breath caught. The boy's voice was barely audible. One word rasped out from somewhere deep inside. "Run." Daniel took a shaky step back. What did he just say?" Liana's eyes snapped open. Her face paled. She looked at Daniel, and for the first time, her calm expression cracked. "We have to leave," she whispered. "Now." What are you talking about? He warned you. They're coming. He doesn't have time." Daniel was stunned. "Who is coming? What are you even talking about? He's in a coma. He can't." "You have no idea what was done to your son," she said quickly, glancing at the door. "You think it was an accident, but it wasn't. You have to trust me." He stepped in front of her, furious now. "I don't even know who you are." "I'm not just a nurse," she said quietly. "I came because your son called me." "Are you insane?" Liana moved toward the machines, her hands flipping switches quickly. One by one, the monitors went dark. "What the hell are you doing?" Daniel shouted. "I'm getting him out of here before they realize he's awake. If they find out what?" A sharp knock on the door interrupted them. Daniel froze. Liana whispered, "Too late." She turned to him. "Do not open that door, please." Bang, bang, bang. "Mr. Carrington," came a voice through the wood. Calm, controlled. "This is Dr. Pinar. May I come in?" Daniel hesitated. "He's Evan's neurologist," he said aloud, mostly to himself. Liana grabbed his wrist. "He's not who you think he is." "What are you talking about?" "He's been." The voice on the other side interrupted again. "I just need to speak with you. Alone." "There's been a development," Liana whispered. "If you open that door, he'll take Evan away. You won't see your son again." Daniel looked between her and the door. His thoughts raced. Was she lying? Was Dr. Penner lying? Evan had moved. Evan had whispered, "Run." Bang, bang, bang. This time, the voice was colder. "Open the door. Now." Suddenly, the lock clicked. Liana's eyes widened. "They have the override key. We have seconds. Help me." She pulled open a drawer and grabbed something metal, a small folding wheelchair. She began moving tubes and wires. Daniel rushed to her side. "Wait, what are we doing? We can't just unplug him. He doesn't need these anymore," she said quickly. "They were only keeping him quiet." "What?" Liana looked him in the eyes. "Trust me, or lose him." The door handle began to turn. Daniel swallowed, looked at Evan, looked at the woman he didn't know but whose hands didn't tremble. Then he moved. Fast. Together, they lifted Evan gently into the chair. Liana pressed something under the mattress. There was a tiny beep. What was that? Disabling his tag. His what? But there was no time. The door creaked open just as Liana grabbed Daniel's hand. "Go left. Toward the surgical wing," she hissed. "What if they follow?" She looked back, eyes cold and sharp. "Then we don't stop running." And they ran down sterile hallways past confused nurses. Alarms began to ring. Daniel pushed the wheelchair with trembling hands. Evan's head slumped forward, but for a second, just a second, Daniel saw something. A faint smile on Evan's lips. He wasn't gone. He was in there, alive, and someone had wanted him silent. Secrets and survival flashbacks, secrets, betrayal. The truth behind Evan's coma emerges. They ran until their legs burned. Down the narrow, half-lit corridor of the surgical wing, Daniel's heartbeat echoed louder than the alarm sirens now blaring through the hospital. Liana led the way, her grip firm on Evan's wheelchair. She didn't slow down, not even when orderlies shouted from behind or when Daniel stumbled. Barely keeping up, they turned sharply, burst through a side door, and emerged into a service hallway Daniel didn't even know existed. It smelled of dust, copper, and forgotten secrets. Finally, Liana halted at a locked maintenance elevator. She tapped a code into a hidden panel. The door slid open with a shudder. Daniel hesitated. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe," she said, wheeling Evan in. "Somewhere they won't find him again." Flashback. 11 days ago, Daniel stood outside Evan's hospital room, voice cracking as he barked at a specialist. "You're saying his brain just shut down?" After a simple collision, the doctor avoided eye contact. Technically, it wasn't simple. The impact triggered something rare, a neuro lockdown. Daniel frowned. He didn't even hit his head. "We believe it was a genetic condition, extremely rare, likely inherited. You may want to get tested too." But something hadn't felt right then, and it felt even worse now. Present underground tunnel. The elevator stopped with a groan. They stepped out into darkness. "This is beneath the hospital," Daniel asked, panting. "Why does this even exist?" Liana handed him a flashlight. It was part of the old building, not on the blueprints anymore. They followed a winding tunnel, cobwebs brushing their shoulders. Finally, they emerged into a small underground room with medical equipment, dusty but functional, and a fold-out cot. "This is where we hide?" he asked. "For now, until Evan stabilizes, until I tell you the truth." Daniel lowered Evan onto the cot and stared at the boy's peaceful face. He said, "Run." He knew something was coming. Liana nodded. "Because Evan isn't in a coma." "Not exactly. The truth begins to unfold." Liana knelt beside Evan and opened her bag. She took out a thin black journal, flipping to a marked page. "Your son is gifted, Mr. Carrington, and someone knew that before even you did." Daniel stared at her. "Gifted how? Do you believe in people who can hear things others can't? Feel things most people shut out? You're talking about psychics. I'm talking about neurosensitives. People born with heightened brain frequencies. Your son is one of them." Daniel ran his hand through his hair. "That sounds like science fiction." "It's not. It's science the world doesn't want to admit exists." Evan's brain didn't shut down. It overloaded. Something or someone triggered it on purpose. Daniel's voice hardened. "Who would do that to a child?" Liana paused. Then she said the name that changed everything. "Dr. Penor." Daniel stiffened. "The same neurologist who's been leading Evan's care." Liana nodded. "He's not just a doctor. He's part of a group that's been researching and experimenting on gifted children for years." "Experimenting," Daniel repeated. "You're accusing him of harming kids." "I'm not accusing. I'm warning you. They call it the Quieting Project. It's designed to suppress neural sensitivity. to control the minds of children who can't be predicted. Daniel's stomach turned. You're saying they put Evan in a coma on purpose? Not a coma, a neural prison. Betrayal and gut punch. A reveal. Daniel stumbled backward, his mind spinning, and then it hit him. The accident. It wasn't random. He remembered the SUV that struck them. No driver ever found. The cameras had gone dark for exactly 2 minutes. It was all staged. His voice broke. Why my son? Because of you, Liana said quietly. Daniel looked up. Me. You're not just a tech CEO. You've built some of the most advanced neural interaction tools in the private sector. Your patents have been requested by governments. But you refused. Daniel's mouth went dry. They wanted Evan to be a message. No, Liana said softly. They wanted him to be the prototype. The hidden power of EVA. Nia placed her hand over Evan's chest. I need you to trust me with something, Mr. Carrington. I can bring him back. You already woke him. No, that was just the surface. If I go deeper, I can bring his consciousness out. But it's dangerous for both of us. Daniel hesitated. What happens if you fail? Liana looked up, eyes shining with something, between fear and faith. Then he may never return at all. Choice, trust, or fight alone. Daniel stared at his son. So small, so still. But earlier he'd smiled and whispered. Something real was still alive inside. He clenched his fists. Do it. Liana closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She whispered in that same strange language. Again, placing both palms against Evan's temples, the lights flickered. Evan's body shivered. Daniel held his breath. Then Evan gasped, loud. His chest rose. His eyes shot open. He stared at Liana, first, then turned to his father. Dad, he whispered. Daniel rushed to him. Evan, oh my God. But then Evan screamed. A sharp, high-pitched sound that wasn't human. Liana grabbed her ears. Something's wrong. He's still connected to them. Daniel watched in horror as Evan's body, convulsed, the heart monitor, which wasn't even plugged in, started beeping by itself. Liana leaned forward, whispering urgently into his ear again. Slowly, Evan's shaking eased. His breathing steadied. His eyes rolled back and then, focus, Dad. He said again, softer. They're watching. From inside me. Cliffhanger, ending the decision that changes EVR. White, Hachi and Jeden stared at Liana. What does he mean? What do we do? Now, Liana looked at them both. Her voice barely a whisper. We need to break the neural connection. That means we can't run anymore. We have to go back to Penor. To Penor, Daniel exploded. You want me to walk my son back into the hands of the man who did this? Liana's jaw was set. Yes, because he holds the key to disconnecting. Evan, without it, your son will always be a puppet. Daniel's fists clenched. He wanted to scream, hit something, run far away with Evan. But Evan looked up at him and whispered, Dad, I want to fight. Daniel looked into his son's eyes, clear, brave, alive, and just like that, he knew they weren't just going to hide. They were going to end this. Revenge and revelation. The truth comes out. Power shifts. And Evan isn't the only one changed. The city was quiet before dawn. But inside the abandoned underground lab beneath the hospital, everything had changed. Evan Carrington, once silent in a coma, now sat cross-legged on the cot. His body was weak, but his eyes held something deeper, clear, bright, but older than a 9-year-old's gaze should ever be. Daniel sat beside him, one arm gently resting around his son's shoulder. Across from them, Liana paced. She was sketching symbols on a worn sheet of paper, symbols that looked like a mix of medical graphs and ancient runes. Evan glanced at her. I still hear them, he whispered. Liana froze. What are they saying now? Evan blinked slowly. That I was never meant to wake up. The plan, go back to Penor. Daniel still couldn't believe he'd agreed to this. After everything Penor had done trapping his son's mind inside a neural prison, he was now going back to the man. But Liana had explained it clearly. Is connected to the neural grid he planted in Evan. If we don't cut the root, Evan will always be under their reach. The only way out is through him. Daniel clenched his jaw. Then we don't walk in quietly. We bring the fight to him. Evan's new mind. As they prepared, Liana began to test something shocking. Evan, she said softly, holding up a tablet. I want you to try something. Think about this screen changing colors. Evan squinted at the tablet. The screen flickered, then glowed bright blue. Daniel gasped. Liana didn't flinch. Again, This time Evan changed the screen red, then green, then off completely. Evan, how did you? I can feel the electricity now, he said. It's like I can talk to machines. Liana nodded. That's your gift. And now that you're awake, it's growing stronger. They never wanted you to realize it. Daniel exhaled. They were trying to hijack his abilities, to use him like a human computer. Liana's voice darkened. No, worse. They were training him to be a weapon. Breaking in the plan was risky. Penner wasn't just a doctor. He had private labs, guards, and backups. But Daniel still had resources and contacts. He called in a favor from a former military tech engineer named Marcus, who owed him for funding his daughter's cancer treatment years ago. Within an hour, they had hacked into Penner's private security schedules. One wing of his building was unguarded between 3:15 and 3:20 a.m. That was their window. Entering the Lion's Den, the building was sleek, modern, more like a futuristic museum than a lab. Daniel, Evan, and Liana entered through a side elevator. Evan sat in a modified wheelchair, hidden under a blanket. If anything went wrong, he was to stay hidden in the janitor's room while Liana and Daniel confronted Penner. They made it up to the fourth floor, Penner's private lab. Daniel's fists were clenched. He didn't know what would happen, only that something inside him burned hotter than fear. They entered through the glass doors. Penner was already there, waiting. Well, he said coolly, I expected you to come. I just didn't expect you to bring the nurse who broke into my systems. Don't act surprised, Daniel growled. I'm not, Penner said, folding his arms. But I am disappointed. I thought we were building something together. Daniel stepped forward. You used my son as an experiment. Penner smiled faintly. I saved your son from a world that would have torn him apart. You just don't understand the potential he holds. But I do. Liana took a step forward. You mean the way you silenced 5 other children just like him? I've seen your files, Penner. The quieting project started before Evan. Penner's expression flickered, just for a second. Then it turned smug again. You don't know the full picture. You think you're rescuing him, but he's still connected. You brought him closer to danger by waking him up. I don't believe you, Daniel snapped. You should. Penner stepped to a monitor and pressed a button. On the screen of In's brain scan, and something else pulsing at the center. We call it the anchor, Penner said. It's a signal embedded in his subconscious, a seed. Once triggered fully, Evan won't be Evan anymore. Daniel's blood went cold. But we can shut it off, Penner continued. With my code, I have the failsafe, but I'll only hand it over under one condition. Liana stepped in front of Daniel. What condition? Penner's smile widened. You, let me finish what I started. The truth about Liana before Daniel could react. A second voice entered the room. She can't, because she's not who you think she is. Everyone turned. It was Dr. Mira Tansley, Penner's former partner, officially declared dead in a lab fire 2 years ago. Daniel's heart pounded. What is this? Mira stepped forward. Liana wasn't a nurse. Not in the beginning. She was part of our original team. She helped design the anchor protocol, until she turned on us. Daniel looked at Liana, stunned. Is that true? Liana's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. I left the project the day I saw what they were doing to the kids. I took Evan's file. I tried to stop them. I failed. Daniel felt like the floor dropped beneath him. You've been lying. To me? No, she said quickly. I've been protecting Evan. I woke him. I risked everything to get him back to you. But Daniel stepped back, shaken, betrayed. Penner smiled. Still think you can trust her. Evan awakens his power, but just then the building's lights flickered. The floor, HUMMED, and every screen in the lab went black except one. Evan's face appeared on the main monitor. He was no longer the frightened child. His voice was calm, strong. I don't need either of you to break the anchor. Liana turned, eyes wide. Evan, how are you? He interrupted. I followed your minds. Through the grid, I know everything now. What they did, what you did. He looked directly at Penner on the screen. You used me. You thought I was a weapon, but I'm not. I'm the firewall. Suddenly, code flashed across the screens. Fast, too fast to read. Penner stepped back. What are you doing? Liana gasped. He's rewriting the anchor. Daniel looked from the screen to Penner. Looks like he's smarter than all of us. Penner lunged for the control panel, but the system sparked and locked him out. Then the lights blew. Sparks flew. The anchor was gone. Evan's voice echoed once more. You'll never control anyone again. The past haunts, the truth heals, and a father learns what love really means. 1 week later, the sunrise broke gently through the windows of a quiet lakeside cabin 2 hours outside the city. Birds chirped. The water was still, peaceful, alive. Inside the cabin, Daniel Carrington poured hot chocolate into 2 mugs. His once hardened face was softer now. The sharpness in his jaw had relaxed. His dark circles had faded, even if the memories hadn't. Behind him, curled up on the couch, was Evan, fully awake, fully present. The boy's head rested on a pillow, and a soft blanket covered his legs. He looked small, still, but something inside him had changed. He was different. And yet still Daniel's son. The healing Liana had stayed with them in the cabin since the explosion. Daniel hadn't asked her to leave. They all needed time. For Evan, it meant learning how to speak again without flinching. For Daniel, it meant learning how to let go of guilt. For Liana, it meant forgiving herself. That morning, Daniel brought Evan the mug, extra marshmallows, as requested. Evan grinned weakly. "Thanks, Dad." Daniel sat beside him. "How's the head?" "Quieter." "Still hearing anything?" Evan paused, then slowly shook his head. "Not from them, just from everything else." Daniel tilted his head. "What do you mean?" Evan looked out the window. "It's like I can feel trees thinking. Not with words, but they're alive, and they don't lie. People lie, but not nature." Daniel nodded, unsure how to respond. "I'm not scared of it," Evan said. "Not anymore. You don't have to be either." That nearly broke Daniel. He had spent his whole life trying to control everything: his company, his grief, even death. But his son had survived what machines, money, and medicine couldn't fix. Liana's confession later that day. Liana sat across from Daniel on the porch. She looked tired. She always did now. "I think it's time I go," she said quietly. Daniel blinked. "Where?" "There are others. Kids like Evan. Ones who didn't get rescued in time. I can help them. I have to." Daniel sat down. His coffee. "You don't have to fix what Penor did. You already saved Evan." Liana's voice cracked. "But I helped create it. Remember, if I don't make it right, who will?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Will you come back?" She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "If Evan wants me to." Behind the screen door, Evan whispered from inside the house, "I do." They both smiled. Evan's choice that night. Evan stood by the lake, barefoot in the grass. Daniel stood behind him, watching his son take it all in. Evan turned. "Dad." "Yeah, buddy, if I still hear others, not voices, just feelings, should I always ignore them?" Daniel stepped beside him. "You should listen, but never let them control you." Evan nodded thoughtfully. "What if someone else ends up like me?" Daniel rested his hand on Evan's shoulder. "Then we help them, like Liana helped you, like you helped yourself." A letter from the past before she left. Liana handed Daniel a small sealed envelope. Inside was a faded photograph of 5 children in hospital gowns, smiling. One of them was Evan. The rest were unknown. On the back of the photo was scribbled a note. "If they wake up, to find them, save them, their family now." Daniel looked at Liana. "Are they alive?" She nodded. "Some, but hiding, like Evan was." Daniel tucked the photo into his jacket. "Then, I'll make sure they're not hiding alone anymore." Justice in its own way. Penner's lab was gone. The files, destroyed in the fire. But the world didn't stay silent for long. In the weeks that followed, multiple whistleblowers came forward. Anonymous doctors, researchers. One even claimed to have helped Penner design the quieting protocol in a private facility in Eastern Europe. A formal investigation was launched into illegal cognitive experimentation. Daniel testified anonymously. Liana stayed underground. They never found Penner's body. But some nights, Evan would say quietly, "He's still alive, but afraid, because now he knows I'm awake." Full circle. 3 months later, Daniel stood before a large auditorium. He wore a suit again, but something about him was different, more open, human. Behind him, a large screen displayed the title, "The Evan Initiative, Protecting Neurologically Gifted Children Worldwide." He looked out at the crowd, scientists, doctors, parents, and said, "My son was nearly erased, because people were afraid of what he could do, afraid of what he might become. But Evan taught me that power doesn't have to be controlled, it has to be understood. This foundation will protect kids like Evan, not test them, not fear them, but help them live fully. And I hope the world finally starts listening." The crowd applauded. From the side of the stage, Evan waved. Final scene, the soul-hitting moment that night. Back at the cabin, Daniel and Evan sat by the fire. No screens, no noise, just the crackle of wood and the stars above. Evan looked up. Dad, yeah, do you think Mum would be proud of me? Daniel's throat tightened. He hadn't spoken about her much since the accident. But tonight, he didn't hold back. She'd be proud of how strong you are, how brave, and how kind you stayed, even after everything. Evan smiled, tears shining in his eyes. I still feel her sometimes. Not in my head, just here. He placed a hand on his heart. Daniel wrapped his arms around him, holding him tight. I do too. And they sat there, father and son, not in silence, but in peace. Together, alive, free. Final line, and lesson: sometimes the miracle isn't in waking up, it's in remembering who you are. After the world tried to make you forget,